Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Rugby Through the Leagues podcast series 2. We originally had Justin Middleton, who's the commentator for majority of the Rugby Europe Championships. Unfortunately, his schedule didn't quite fit again. He had to cancel last minute, so you're sadly stuck with me. But we're going to continue and talk about Rugby Europe and obviously the pleasure that I had of sort of being able to go and be pitch side for quite a few of the Spain games, alongside all things rugby and everything they've managed to help Rugby TTL with, and us able to spread the word about Rugby Europe. So yeah, it was really good fun, really good championships as well. So obviously standout performers, apart from obviously Georgia just dominating again, was obviously probably Spain. Managed to get a really good second place finish, going to Portugal, beating Portugal on one of Portugal's off days. Obviously managing to get a decent result in the opening game against obviously the Netherlands. A bit of a difficult trip to Switzerland, who another standout was how good Switzerland got towards the end. They got better as the tournament went on, so really big shout out to how Switzerland managed to come back from that heavy defeat at the start of the tournament. So really good fun, really good tournament. And obviously a lot of people keep talking about the Six Nations, but first let's make sure you subscribe, like, follow us on every platform that you physically can to make sure you get more of this content moving forward. Next week's episode is Simon Middleton, ex-England women's manager. So we managed to discuss a lot of his career, that World Cup final, and obviously what he now currently does with World Rugby and emerging nations as well. So that's a really good interview coming up with Simon. So make sure you like, subscribe and follow, and obviously drop a comment for any bits you like and tell us the bits you don't, so that we can make sure it is better for everyone that is watching. So let's get back to the Rugby Europe Championships and the trophy. Obviously we've got the conference, we've got the Women's Rugby Europe Championship, which has just come to an end as well. So Rugby Europe Championships, where do we go forward with this? Because the product is there, but how far will it be allowed to continue? How far does the Rugby Europe Championships grow? Is there any way for the likes of Spain and Georgia to enter into the Six Nations? I think, brutally honest, no. I think that is a closed shop. That is very much... Six Nations is a Six Nations, a lot of prestige around it, and it's not going to have the door opened. So I think we've got to look at another option around developing rugby into that sphere, and it's not going to come in the form of the Six Nations, in my opinion. However, I could be wrong, because the under-18s Six Nations at the minute is classed as a festival. So they've managed to invite Georgia and Spain into the under-18s, and Spain actually managed to beat Scotland the other day as well. So they managed to turn over Scotland, and they went in equal at half-time against England as well. So that was 12-all at half-time. England managed to pull away in the second half. So maybe that's a glimpse into the future, but as it states, it's classed as a festival. I can't see the Six Nations being divulged to anyone else, especially on the men's level. Potentially the women's, which are also discussed with Simon as well. There's probably a slightly more adaptable door opening policy for the Six Nations at a women's aspect, but his opinion of that as well was really good statement of where that development within women's rugby is going to come. So make sure you catch that one next week. But Six Nations rugby is not probably going to see Georgia and Spain. I think the best format is potentially as I've said in a previous article I wrote, a Euro Championship style where we're able to incorporate more of the nations and the tier ones become involved in that, as similar to like a World Cup qualifier process, which is done in football or Euros or a Nations League. But obviously there's the stalwarts that want to keep the summer internationals. I think probably the easiest one to adapt around would be an autumn internationals and allow that autumn series to have a little bit more of an impact upon rugby as a whole. So Spain have obviously got big intentions as well with their 2035 World Cup bid, which we discussed last week with Adam, and a few people commented upon that as well, and they'd like to see that as a joint bid with Portugal. But again, that's a great step forward for Rugby Europe. I just don't see Spain wanting to share that at rugby level potentially, but I think that would be a really good way of strengthening the bid rather than weakening it. And then Georgia are now shouting for a URC place for their Black Lions, so obviously they're in the Challenge Cup. They're now shouting for a URC spot to allow more game time. I think that might be off the back of Abu Tabasadze saying that he wants to go and try and play at the top level. So they're probably hoping that they're not going to lose a significant amount of their top talent that haven't already ventured into the top 14. Again, Spain have also followed up with that question for a entrance for a team. I don't think Spain are anywhere in the same realm at the minute at that level. We've got the Rugby Europe Super Cup coming up, which last year did not end very well for Spain with their representation with the Castilla Leon Iberians. They finished bottom of their group with no wins against the Black Lions and the Lustianos, which is obviously from Portugal. So Spain are at a different crossroads with having probably a representative team for the URC or the Challenge Cup at a bare minimum for what they're sort of asking. I don't think that is set up for until the centralised contract is able to pull players back potentially. So you'd have to factor that around the Division d'Honour and how they would select for the Spanish representation on the Iberians, because you've then got to lean on clubs, top 14 players. Do they get called back to play Challenge Cup, or is it just going to be say, well, actually we're only going to include under 20s, under 18s, and a select few of unallocated senior players, but then the senior players don't manage to get enough game time, so they'd either have to be loaned out during the rest of the season to Division d'Honour teams, etc., which is not at the level that Spain rugby needs to progress. But with a successful 2035 bid, I think the Division d'Honour will grow and have to grow to create that further pathway for Spanish rugby. It's going to cost money, it's going to cost time, there's going to have to be stadiums, there's going to have to be a lot of work done for Spanish rugby to grow into what it could do. Georgia and the Black Lions are obviously financially backed pretty well by certain individuals who've got significant funds to support the development and not have the same concern of the commercial element of bringing in players to the league, whereas the Spanish league is a mixture of players that are coming to try and play in Europe and also developing Spanish players, which is working so far. Like, obviously the likes of Mario Picardi's come through. He's obviously gone over to England, Matt Folds, etc., and players that have managed to go over to the top 14, Lucien Richardet, and you've got Hugo Picardi, Mario's brother, are all playing over in France at the minute, and on that precipice of some of the teams, some floating in and out of the first team, which is really, really positive, and then hopefully be progressing very well for the seniors. But I don't, until that's potentially backed up with a national league, can you ask to put a team in the Challenge Cup like the Black Lions have? That's my opinion. I can't see it happening for a couple of seasons, but a significant structure would need to be put in place to make sure that team is significantly sourced. Most of the players that were in the Iberian side haven't been in or around the Rugby Europe conversation this time round. So is it players that have made it past, or is it players that are making it into the future? That would have to be how we see it, but you'd still want to have significant representation for players that can make sure they are part of the national setup, similar to the Black Lions, to support the development of a Challenge Cup. Or do you go whoever wins the Division d'Honour that season, or the Copa del Rey, and put them into the Challenge Cup, which would be a really interesting way to try and drive progression within the game. And I think that would probably be my preference, is you finish top of the Spanish Division d'Honour or the Copa del Rey or etc., or a bit of playoff between the two if it's two different teams, and they get to qualify for the Challenge Cup the season after. That'd be a really interesting way of improving the club game at that level, I believe, and obviously we're going to have players that are playing in the top 14. We've got players that are going to be playing in the Champions Cup, already in the Challenge Cup at other levels. So does that then bring players back to Spanish rugby at the Division d'Honour level to allow them to target Challenge Cup and European rugby? That would be a really, really positive spin on to Division d'Honour, and really interesting to see. So that'll be one I'm going to keep abreast of, and hopefully we can find out how that's going to pan out, because again, I can't see the URC allowing the Black Lions team in. I think it would be really interesting to add them to it, and it'd be another really positive move for Georgian rugby. I just can't see how they add that to the mix. Again, the travel to Georgia adds on a lot of issues to a lot of clubs. Obviously, it's already difficult enough for a lot of clubs to travel to South Africa, but that's one flight. It's just a long flight, and most clubs sacrifice certain travel. You add Georgia into the mix, and you've then got 2 flights, stopovers, extra travel for game weeks. It'd be a benefit for Black Lions, because obviously they'll have certain teams turning up that don't want to play or haven't been able to travel as well as others, and potentially be able to pick up some points there. So that'd be really interesting to see how the Black Lions would benefit, and also potentially hamper them. But they're used to the travel with the multiple flights in and out of different places to get out of Georgia, or they're playing or living in certain other areas. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how the URC could grow. I can't see it happening, but that would probably be the first part of progression for Georgian rugby, and that's probably the only conversational commercial piece that they'll be able to have is with the URC to add that. The Six Nations is a closed shop, I believe, and I do agree with a lot of the conversations. A lot of people are saying that it is what it is, and that's how that is. People buy into it, etc. And unless people are willing to put open the checkbooks, and there's that money. But I think that is a closed conversation. I think you've got to look at another tournament, or make the autumn series more important on a sort of a European 1/tier 2 basis. Like, you could also throw Japan, Fiji into the mix, but Rugby Europe, for me and for most people within Europe, is potentially the passion that we want that to grow and allow them to have a punt at the top teams. And yeah, it was a bit of a transitional year for a lot of clubs or nations within the Rugby Europe Championships. It was a great tournament, but it kind of disappointed on a certain level that there wasn't more jeopardy around the qualification for the 2027 World Cup for the top 4 spots. The jeopardy come later on, and fair play to Belgium for being able to step forward and take that spot. It kind of looked like it was going to be a Netherlands takeover, but Netherlands didn't turn up to the last game really, and Belgium saved the best till last. Well, they had the blinding game at the first game, and then kind of really switched it on for the last game and managed to take that 5th spot. And in turn, they've managed to take the trip to America as well. So they've replaced Netherlands, and they're going to go and travel to America to take on the USA over there. And I can't remember their other game, but they've got 2 games rather than having to wait till the November internationals, the World Cup qualifiers. So yeah, it'd be really good to see how Belgium continue now that they've got an additional couple of games in the summer. Spain are obviously travelling over there to take on the USA and Canada, and that'd be a really, really good game to see. Both of them, obviously USA is quite a common game for Spain. They've got a really good benchmark to progress themselves against there. So Canada's going to be a difficult game as well for them, and we've got Mario Bacardi coming on, as I said, in there just before the tournament, just before the summer tour. So whether there's going to be some rotation of players ahead to keep an eye on who's going to be available for the 2027 World Cup as well now. So 4 teams qualified. Belgium throw himself into the mix for Rugby Europe to represent with potentially five teams, which will be amazing. And then we've obviously got the next cycle starts next time round of the promotion relegation for Rugby Europe. So we've obviously got to talk about Germany. They did not have the tournament they expected, and to be honest, how they started the tournament, didn't expect it either, in my opinion. I didn't expect them to end how it did, especially in such dramatic fashion against Switzerland. And last minute drop goal from Switzerland was phenomenal watching from a rugby point of view, but heartbreaking for any German fans out there. They did not manage to field an unchanged side, I think, throughout, because a lot of injuries, a lot of tactical decisions were made throughout, and it was very interesting to see how they did not manage to get a foothold in that tournament. And even when they got the lead against Switzerland, they threw it away and they looked really, really unsettled throughout that game. So really interesting. And we've got Sean Ingle lined up to come on and probably talk about that firsthand from within. So I'll leave that probably more for the episode with Sean, because he was a standout performer through that tournament. It tackled everything and anything. Just was not on the side, was not with them, and it was a really interesting one. The Netherlands obviously now changing their gaffer, so they're going to be looking for the next step of progression ahead of next year. Promotion relegation's obviously the big one for next season, with the finals day usually decided for all four spots. So you'd have the 1st, 3rd and 5th, and then the 7th playoffs all played on the same day. So Germany and Switzerland, well, Switzerland obviously managed to pick Germany this time. Germany have obviously got to make sure they don't get relegated. But the trophy, Rugby Europe trophy, looks very, very, very competitive. this season went down to the last game between the top two sides. So we managed to witness Poland, who got relegated last time out of the championship. They managed to take on Sweden in the last game, which saw Poland win 29-25 to pick up the title. So that is definitely going to be a really interesting one to keep an eye on for next season for the promotion relegation. Luxembourg obviously had a blinding conference last season, struggled this time in the trophy, finished on 2 points. Lithuania finished 5th on 5. Croatia got 6 points in 4th. And then the top three sides, obviously Poland finished top on 22, Sweden on 19 in 2nd, and then Czechia finished 3rd with 16 points. So it seems like a league of two halves there, and I wonder who can probably step into that gap and close up, or is somebody going to have a really bad season and drop out? Luxembourg obviously had their first dabble at that level and didn't do as well as they did in the conference last year. So yeah, it'd be good fun to keep an eye on both of those next season. Hopefully, obviously, we'll be able to go and see a little bit more of these games as well. So we've managed to get the championships covered. Looks like we're hopefully going to be able to get across to the trophy and be able to follow it all the way through. So men's conference is underway as well, which, if you guys remember, one of the first episodes I did, I managed to actually sit there and go through all of these. So it's broken up into pools and brackets. So Pool A is currently headed up by Denmark. Then you've got on 14 points, Latvia on 11 points in 2nd, Finland in 3rd on 5 points, Norway and Estonia rock bottom on 0. In Pool B, Ukraine are top on 10 points, Austria are 2nd after only one game on 5, Hungary are 3rd with 5 points, and Slovakia are rock bottom on 0. Pool C is headed up by Moldova on 11 points, Turkey on 5 points in 2nd, Serbia are 3rd on 4, and Bulgaria bottom at the minute on 4 as well. So that's a really tight group there in Pool C. Pool D, we have got Malta top on 10 points, Andorra 2nd on 9, Israel in 3rd on 5, and Cyprus are bottom on 0. So the Cyprus-Israel game, I believe, got cancelled the other day as well. So that could all get mixed up on how that happens, whether Israel having to pull out, and obviously they didn't manage to play last season. There's a bit of a change in the guard in Cyprus as well, which the current head coach has managed his last game over there. So there's a bit of a transition, and hopefully we can get Andrew Binikos on in a few episodes' time. I've got to catch up with him at the end of the week to hopefully try and tie him into coming and telling everyone the story about Cyprus rugby. So that'd be really, really exciting to get him on and find out how he got into it and where Cyprus rugby is going to move forward after his departure. And then Pool E, we've got Slovenia on top on 9. Bosnia and Herzegovina are 2nd with 9. Montenegro are 3rd on 5 points, and Kosovo are bottom on 0. So obviously they've moved up from the development league that we talked about last season. So we had a couple of real standout performances in recent weeks as well in the conference, with the top scores in the recent weeks. Ukraine won 86-10 against Hungary the other week, which was a really good scoreline to see and have that come across. Bosnia won 77-10 against Kosovo. Latvia won 62-0 against Estonia. Hungary 51-16 against Slovakia. Finland 81-10 against Norway. Slovenia won 74-10 against Kosovo. Denmark won 105-0 against Estonia. So yeah, there's been some real big scorelines in the conference, and probably some clear gaps of where those clubs are and where that progression of that tournament is, and it'll be really exciting to see how that then pans out as that goes on. The development doesn't seem to have progressed further past the Montenegro and Kosovo side, so that seems to they've been moulded into the conference now. So that is that. Over on the women's side, the women's championships has just come to an end, and Sweden took on Netherlands at the weekend. That ended with a sizable Netherlands win of 90 points to 3 in Sweden. The championship was obviously won by Spain again. Got run close against the Netherlands the week before though, so they finished the tournament top, but on 13 points this time. Netherlands second on 10, Portugal finished third on 5, and then Sweden finished bottom on 0. The women's trophy was won by Belgium, which was a big shout out to what Belgium are trying to do as well. They've recently appointed one of our previous guests, Warren Abrahams, as part of their 7 setup for the women's. So they're really trying to push forward Belgium. Obviously the men's have managed to get a good result and get themselves in the chance for a World Cup qualifier, and they've got a clear path of how they want to develop rugby in Belgium at the minute by the seams of it. So it'll be really good to see how that continues. So they managed to finish top on 9 points. Germany women's finished second on 6, and then Finland finished third on 0. So there's only 3 teams in the women's trophy. So it'd be good to see how these other countries are able to start progressing, because the women's championships looks like it needs a bit more of a couple of teams in there just to try and expand that. But obviously they're trying not to make sure they weaken the rest of it. And then the women's conference has got just 2 teams in it, so Norway and Latvia, which they play in the middle of May. So if anyone wants to pop to Norway and watch Norway-Latvia, that will be on the 10th of May. So that'll be another one to hopefully see how they merge the trophy in the conference, and whether we can get one big Women's Europe Championships moving forward as well, because that'll be a really good way to step the game forward, especially with the World Cup being this year as well, and Spain obviously managing to make it across. But I think the big standout recently for me, in my personal opinion, was the statement within Spanish rugby of how they're now actually trying to put it on the map. It's been a big enough game within certain parts for a long period of time, but it now seems to be ready to kick on, and the interest obviously is there. So I went on Hugh's episodes on his podcast as well, and that's now become that's become his highest viewed episode that he's ever recorded. So it shows that there's a clear demand for Spanish rugby, or especially around Rugby Europe, hopefully. And whether Spain are going to be the leader in that's probably the way forward, because Georgia, everyone knows Georgia, but I think there's a bit of a stigma around Georgia. A lot of people don't seem to be as vocal supporters against them, for them. I think there seems to be a lot of opinions that want to hold them back, which I don't think anyone within rugby should hold anyone back if they're playing good enough rugby for everyone. We need to find a way of making it marketable for all, and we're not in a place of the game to be able to turn any viewers, commercialisation, fans, any way of improving or extending the game to more. I don't think we're in a position to be able to sort of turn that away. So we've got to find a way of allowing Georgia to continue to progress. Like, they're probably a sort of potentially a 1.5 tier nation, same as Fiji. They're probably slightly too good for tier 2, but they're potentially not good enough for tier 1 yet. But you can only improve by playing the best, and if they don't get the option to play the best, then how can we allow the game to continue? And it's not going to be the Six Nations. We know that. It's the autumn internationals have got to take more of an importance for me. For my opinion, that's going to be our only way to move the game forward. And Rugby Europe has got a great product. We've got a really, really great product to go and see in the game, and it's really exciting to see these other nations coming through, like with the list that we just read off there. Imagine some of them for an away day. Like if you got a chance, England are going to go play Cyprus. How many people would be on their way to Cyprus just to go and watch England play? And England football fans get this option a lot through those sort of games, and they get to go and explore and see other cultures, other nations, other ways of football. Is that something that we miss in rugby, or have we just got to constantly keep going to the same places, which we could get the best of both worlds? We could get those same places and also a little bit more if you're able to open a door and say, actually, we're going to go and play these games, and we're going to end up England get drawn against Latvia and stuff. That it's going to be significantly one-sided for a very, very long time. But that's no different to what's happening in the women's Six Nations at the minute with England. They are so dominant within that space. That is not going to change for a period of time either. So is that okay? Are we just going to leave that as that brand and that will grow its own way? I think they'll probably be more adaptable to add other teams. Like, it'd be really good to see Spain and say like the Netherlands added in to a women's Six Nations festival style, similar to what the under-18s had done. Maybe that is what the under-18s Six Nations festival is. Maybe this is a pre-pilot to what they have planned to add Georgia and Spain, or Portugal, Spain, or Georgia. There must be some of a plan down the line. They can't have just come up with this festival idea and then thought it's only going to be able to be played at under-18s. Does that under-18s then become an under-20s in 2 years' time when those under-18s are at that level? And then is the natural progression for that to become a senior Six Nations festival? Is this something that World Rugby haven't come up with, or Six Nations haven't announced that this is how they've got the pathway? Which will be, I think, from what I've seen and what I've watched, is a really, really good product to rugby. Spain obviously add a very exciting way of playing rugby. Georgia play rugby as Georgia do, and they have added. Georgia nearly pipped Wales in the under-18s Six Nations as well the other day. So maybe it's a trial. It'd be great to see if that is what they're trying to create, but they've had to do that at a festival base. So they've picked Vichy in France. So is it one of those that you've got to hold it as a festival tournament, or can we find a way of making it that you get to go and experience these other places? Because I think that's what adds the fun and excitement to the Six Nations, is that you get to rotate where you go every couple of years. And I think it's a really good fun to allow us to go and watch rugby and see rugby in different places. I love going to Rome, to watch England. Obviously, going to Scotland's brilliant. And obviously Wales, what a stadium, what an atmosphere. Why can't we find that elsewhere? Why can't we go and showcase those sort of atmospheres to other places? Like Spain had a really, really good atmosphere. Portugal's great fun. Really, really passionate fans as well. And I think if you added the mix of England or Wales, going to certain nations like that, it would be a really good advert, and we'll find out that in the summer as well, actually, because Portugal are hosting Ireland in July in the Estadio Nacional, where I went for the Portugal-Spain game, and what a stadium, what a place, what a spectacle that would be to put Portugal against Ireland in Lisbon in July. It'll be a great spectacle. The only problem at the minute, you can't drink in a stadium in Portugal, so there's no alcohol. So I know they're having to try and resolve that pretty sharpishly, because not being able to drink in a rugby stadium is probably a slightly different culture to what happens in a lot of places. So it'd be great fun to see Ireland take on Portugal. Hoping it will be still a fairly competitive Irish side, but it's not going to be anywhere near the level that would be attending. But they probably wouldn't be attending that game if it wasn't Lions season. And it's a really exciting time for Rugby Europe. Next season's going to get more tasty as well, obviously with the promotion relegation. And I don't want to ramble on too much, because I've always really been a big enough advocate. This is probably going to be a quick one in that sense. But what is everyone's opinion on the Six Nations? Is it got to be left as locked? Is it one that we can open the door, or do we trial it at younger age groups and then bring it into fruition as it grows, or keep it there? Make sure you keep that as the Six Nations, leave it as that, and then we develop a tournament? Or has other people got other ideas? Because there's got to be a lot of different ways of skinning the cat potentially, and other people have got different ideas, and it'd be great to hear what everyone's opinion is on that. And so hopefully everyone's gathered where we are in Rugby Europe. It was obviously planned for having Justin Middleton on, and we could have discussed it more in depth, but next week's a blinder. We've got Simon Middleton on, great guest, get to talk about women's rugby, where he's been, what he's done, and we have got guests lined up for quite a while now, so don't worry, there's not going to be too many more times that I left to ramble potentially. We're hopefully lining up a potential special episode to discuss another subject within grassroots rugby, so keep an eye out for that. That one's going to come out as an add-on, and we're just finalising the last bits on that. And obviously, thanks for listening. It's not quite the episode we planned, but we have got Justin lined back up to come back on. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, drop a comment about what I said at the end there. What's your opinions on the Six Nations? What's your opinions on how do we add Tier 2 nations into a format, or do we just leave Rugby Europe as it is and then let those teams go and fight it out at the World Cup if they ever qualify? So it'd be great to hear your opinions around that, and just make sure you carry on sharing the love the game. Pre-season's out there now, so those that haven't got back to playing rugby, get back, and hopefully we'll get to catch you in the next episode. Thank you and goodbye.